Hello, my name is Zachary, and I'm interested in finding new ways to appreciate art. Today, I want to share with you a framework for falsifying beauty. Now, we all know that art has subjective components, but art also contains objective knowledge. And if we focus on that objective knowledge, then we can criticize art in the ways that we know how to criticize knowledge. The art has abstract components that can reliably transform the world, and that's approximately the constructor theory conception of knowledge. And that that knowledge embodied in art functions as an aesthetic solution to aesthetic problems. A major key here is to not evaluate the entire work of art, but to look at specific problem solutions within the work of art and evaluate those as beautiful or comparatively boring compared to another solution. A good solution is one that works reliably across many contexts, and a better solution works in more contexts. So let's get concrete here. Consider what makes a movie opening good. Specifically, the question may be, how well does this movie opening capture the audience's attention and prepare them for the story? So a common subjective type of view would be evaluating this based on feelings alone, whether you liked it or not on one particular occasion. But with a more constructor theory inspired view, we want to look at how reliable that transformation is. So that's reliable over time, reliable with different people, reliable with repeat viewings, reliable in different works of art, and reliable in different universes. And the transformation could be anything like causing a positive emotion. It could be conveying information. It could be preserving the work of art. It could be replicating the solution. But today we're going to be talking about directing attention. So in this framework, the reliability is the measure of the value. Okay, so let's look at two rival solutions, which are two different embodiments of knowledge that address the same problem, which is how to open a movie, capture the audience's attention, and prepare them for the story. So solution A, this comes from King Kong from 1933. And they use a bold title card sequence. Title cards just means basic text on the screen, and there's music that plays for about 2 minutes. At the time, this was a very reliable way to tell audiences to prepare for a spectacle. And solution B, seen in a more modern movie, Godzilla Minus One from 2023. In this movie, it just starts, drops you right to the action immediately. There's no opening credits. There's no title cards. There's not even an establishing shot. It's just the first scene that contains plot immediately. And that is sufficient to prepare the audience for the story. Now, pretty much every movie from the 1920s to the 1960s started with something like Solution A, where they have title cards and opening credits. And pretty much every movie now from like late 2000s starts with something closer to Solution B, where they just start the movie without having opening credits and without having title cards. So my question is, was this shift from the title cards to starting immediately, was that just a change in fashion? Was that a cultural whim? Well, if you believe that all art is subjective, you might think so. You might think that there's been no progress, there's been no improvement. There may have been some directors who decided to like one thing over the other for random cultural reasons or personal reasons. But I firmly disagree with this. This change was not an accident. We have found a better solution for this specific problem. The cold opening is just a more reliable way to catch the audience's attention and prepare them for the movie. And this means that it works for more audiences, it works in more movies, it works in more genres, it works in more mediums. I suspect it'll work over a longer time horizon, and I suspect it works over a larger proportion of the multiverse. The cold opening is just a more reliable solution for this transformation. And other aesthetic solutions in the future will depend on this solution. Even older movies that have simple title cards and opening credits would be improved if those were removed and the plot just started immediately. And this isn't because of any change in technology. They could have started movies like this in the 30s without title cards. But this is because of a growth of knowledge, and I'm going to call that a growth of beauty. So we could say that for this specific problem of grabbing attention and setting the mood for a movie, the cold opening has falsified the title card opening. The older solution is just less beautiful. The older solution is more boring. The older solution is less reliable than the newer solution. And anyone who believes that art is subjective would probably miss or downplay this type of objective improvement. And also, this solution, it has reach. So it's not just King Kong movies and Godzilla movies. It works in other media. It's kind of what it means to work in different contexts. So TikToks, YouTube videos, books, albums, museums, all of these things could start immediately, or they could start with title cards, right? And we know that now. We know it's a mistake to bury the lead, right? Have you ever seen a YouTube video start with 5 seconds of silence and a title card? Or have you ever seen a comedy special where the comic is walking around New York City for 2 minutes before the first joke? Right? These are mistakes, and they would be improved if those were removed. Okay, so I want to get to a few common objections to this idea, and I'm sure we hear more later. Okay. First objection is that I'm being overly reductive, because the intro for any movie is not only to capture attention. And I actually agree to that. There's never only one function of any aesthetic solution. They can always do multiple things. But the process of guessing one or more of the functions is what allows us to test it and compare it to other solutions. And then we can determine which is better or worse. And we can then refine what we consider to be a good solution and refine what we think is the problem. All right. So we might want to point out that title card openings are good for triggering nostalgia. If we care about that, then we can compare it to other solutions that would trigger nostalgia and, in fact, figure out which one is better or worse for that specific transformation. But if we were to hide behind vagueness and overly insist that there are things that we don't know about a particular aesthetic solution, then we will be blind to progress and stop it. Another objection is that not all media should start in the same way. And I kind of understand why it might sound like I'm saying something like that, but I don't think that all media should start in the same way. I don't think that there's any aesthetic solution that would work in every single context. And I actually think that that would make us infallible if we had a solution that worked in every context. But there's always a solution that can work in more contexts, which means that we can have progress. One of the main jobs of an artist would be to create a work of art that has generally the same family of problems as another work of art, but it turns out to be a refutation or a counterexample to the known solution that we have. And that gives us clarity for the range at which a solution will apply and gives us clarity when we actually achieve progress. So we may know modern movies do well with cold openings, but if we adjust our problem solution to the problem being starting a comedy movie and catching the audience's attention and setting the mood with a solution of using a slow title card sequence that uses obviously fake subtitles to catch viewers' attention. This is what was done with Monty Python and the Holy Grail. This adjustment adds aesthetic content to our theory, and it adds surprising constraints to the rest of the art. And if it's any good, then this new theory will have wider reach than the original. Because an artist can always create new context, there could be no perfect final solution for any particular transformation. And that's precisely why beauty can grow forever. All right, so you might wonder how this can change how you see art. Well, I can only just talk about how it has changed how I view art. Before really understanding this view, I've been prone to faulting works of art for being imperfect. But now I expect every aesthetic solution within any work of art to be improvable. So it's never going to be perfect. And I see every work of art now as an experiment with different aesthetic solutions, an experiment in beauty, putting beauty into different contexts to see where it fits well and where it does not fit well. Right? And this is just like how new technology or scientific experiment is putting objective knowledge into different contexts to see where it fits well and where it does not fit well, and then every experiment becomes this inspiration for further development. I feel like that all comes naturally with viewing beauty as objective problem solving knowledge. So, with this, we gain a powerful lens for appreciation. It gives us a framework to discuss the reach of aesthetic solutions, how to be wrong about our aesthetic solutions, and most importantly, how to see art progress and how beauty can grow forever. Thank you.
Yeah, I think early on you said that we should think about the aesthetic solutions within a piece of art as parts of it, as opposed to trying to evaluate the piece of art as a whole. Does that mean like you wouldn't you don't think it's meaningful to ask the question about a particular work of art? How does it work overall as a solution to some problem that can't be broken down into those subcomponents, or is it only meaningful to think of them in terms of specific problems to specific solutions that are contained within the larger whole?
I think it's better to understand it in terms of the specific solutions within the whole, but there may be a work of art where the entire thing is doing a specific transformation, and you could evaluate that in a particular way. But most works of art are not like that. Most works of art have different components within it that solve particular things within the work of art at a particular time.
I guess I'm wondering if every work of art might have both of those.
Perhaps.
Maybe like sum is greater, or a whole is greater than the sum of its parts problem that you might be able to assess in addition to all the individual problems and solutions inside of it, or not, or if it's different from medium to medium, maybe.
Yeah, I can imagine that many works of art do have that property. Yes.
This might be an adjacent question, actually. I'm wondering, like, you can imagine civilizations across the universe would like converge on similar conceptions of physics because there's objective knowledge there. I think that would happen with aesthetics and beauties as well. Like, surely disparate civilization would converge on similar things, or is it open-ended for some other reason?
So I think that we would converge on some parts for any aesthetic solution to replicate or to work in that particular work. There is going to be background knowledge that is necessary. And that background knowledge may be based on DNA, or maybe based on culture, or it may just be based on the nature of reality itself. So if it's based on the nature of reality itself, then it would kind of naturally work with any culture. And then on the other hand, if it's based on culture, but the cultural aspects is based on our universal aspects. So we've done some development in terms of morality and found some things about culture that should apply to all cultures, then that would be more universal. Yeah.
So to take your first example, about the title sequence, what
Yes.
being slow and one of them like jumping straight in.
Yes.
I would have thought that the slow thing is better for the culture of the whatever it was, like 50s or 60s, because they were used to like chatting and then like having their whatever snacks and so on. And then there's like a slow kind of rap, whereas if they just like suddenly there'd be a sort of a jarring actually. And
Right.
so I'm guessing I'm partly taking issue with the idea that the other one was better rather than solving a different problem.
Right.
And then also my question is something like, well, when is it in fact like better, and like do you have to fix the context in order to make progress in? Because it feels like that's jumping context.
Right. Okay, so to address the second point first, it is easiest to see progress if you have a work of art and you can just replace one part of it to see if it works better, right? Then you kind of all else is equal, right? That makes it easier. So that's the easiest way to see that. In terms of the different problems that the older movies were solving, right? So older movies oftentimes have an overture where they wanted to play music for 15 minutes or so before people came in. So they'd sit and wait. And it's very similar to opera. So they kind of had the structure of opera. And then they would have the opening credit and then the title cards. And then sometimes they have things to read before. So there is a different thing going on there. And then also, they had lots of laws for the guilds and the unions that forced people to have title cards. But we know that many of the directors who were making movies were going against that. They're trying specifically to stop doing that. They wanted to not have that happen. But, institutions stopping the growth of beauty or stopping the growth of knowledge did not allow that to happen. So I think that's time.